on the Big Five, the handful of films in 2019 that grabbed my excitement the most. And as you can most certainly guess, there are going to be a few Marvel films in the mix. Starting with the girl that rocks her company's namesake, Captain Marvel. Now, before I go any further, let me stop to confess, I know next to nothing about Captain Marvel as a character. All I really know is that her name is Carol Danvers, and that she's apparently super powerful, even by MCU standards. But, very much like certain other films on this list, that actually adds to my intrigue. I'm very curious to see how this smaller adventure is going to link up to a much more massive Marvel movie that releases just a little less than 2 months away now. Can't believe I'm thinking that. While we go on said smaller journey, I'm just interested to get to know this person who I've never been all that familiar with in the comic world before. I think the last time the Marvel Cinematic Universe introduced a character in a solo outing, at least, who we hadn't seen in any previous media, was Doctor Strange back in 2016, and anyone who's talked to me personally knows how I feel about both that film and the Sorcerer Supreme himself, so who knows? We don't have very long to wait, and perhaps Captain Marvel can generate that same feeling in myself and many more people. While we're talking about Marvel, though, let's keep the theme going with another solo outing. This time, however, I'm going to be talking about a superhero that I am very familiar with. That is, of course, Spider-Man, as he travels far from home. Now, I've been a fan of the friendly neighborhood wall crawler for a very long time, and I've very much admired Tom Holland's portrayal of him in these past 3 Marvel movies he's starred in. So, of course, I'm going to be excited for any adventure he finds himself in. That being said, I think this one's going to be a very unique entry in Spider-Man lore for a couple of reasons. First of all, to my knowledge, it's the first Spider-Man film that takes place primarily outside of the United States. We're going to be in Europe a lot, so it seems. So I'm looking forward to seeing some very cool European sightseeing imagery. Secondly, I'm very fascinated to see how Mysterio is going to be integrated into the whole project. He's always been one of my favorite Spider-Man baddies, and to see Gyllenhaal don that costume, a very comic book accurate costume, I was very surprised, but seeing that makes me giddy as a school child, I'm not gonna lie. But most importantly, and I only realized this while I was writing the initial script for this project, this is going to be the first Marvel movie to take place after a previous Marvel movie that I kind of alluded to in the last entry. And I'm just really interested to see how they're going to go from this, because that past Marvel movie is the one that everything's been building up to, and to see how this one sets the franchise off on a new foot, it's just, I'm not really sure how they're going to do it. It might be some interesting new territory, but whatever the case, I'm excited to see my boy Spidey sling into action once again. Have I talked about Your Name before? Well, for those who are unaware, it has become not only my favorite animated film, but one of my favorite movies, period, since it first released back in 2016. As a result, I'm sure you all probably could have guessed this, but I've also become an admirer of its writer-director Makoto Shinkai in that time, and I've been very curious as to what his next project would be. Well, this year, we're finally going to get that in the form of Tenki no Ko, better known as Weathering with You. Now, like some other entries on this list, I know very little about the plot with this movie going forward, at least at this point anyway. But with Shinkai at the helm, there's a lot of things I just expect to come along with it. Gorgeous animation, wonderfully relatable characters, and a story structure that's unconventional, but in the best way possible. Like, it is weird, I will have to admit that this high up on the list, I have very little to say about this movie, but as I've also said, that could make the final product all the more exciting when I finally get there. Let's hope for a film that continues Mr. Shinkai's streak of excellence. Now we come to the dynamic duo, the two films of 2019 that I am the most excited for. Now, even before looking over the massive slate of movies set to release this year, I knew for a fact these two were going to top all the others. What I did not know, however, was just how difficult it would be to pick one over the other, given the respective franchises both of them belong to. But, in the end, there had to be a runner-up, and while I doubt it's the popular choice, I'm giving my number 2 slot to Avengers Endgame. Now, I am confident this is going to be the number 1 spot for a lot of people, and believe me, I completely understand. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been shaping modern superhero films for over a decade now, and one of the biggest steps for that franchise has definitely been last year's Avengers Infinity War. That became not only my favorite comic book movie, but one of my favorite films, period, when I saw it last April. And just like everyone else, I needed to know, and still need to know, what's gonna happen after that cliffhanger. I don't know if Endgame can top Infinity War in terms of quality, but there is too much for me to contain my excitement. In addition to the conclusion to this 11-year story arc, this is gonna be the last time we see some of these characters that we've grown to love. The action in these movies has been getting bigger and better with each film. Honestly, I think there's little I can tell you that you don't already know, other than I am both excited and terrified for what's coming at the end of April, and as I say this, I'm confident that you are too. At last we come to my number 1 pick, the film from 2019 that I am most excited to experience. I don't see any point in drawing out the introduction any more than that because I'm confident you all know it's Star Wars Episode 9. And I'm sure what all of you are thinking and possibly even preparing to type. How can you still be on board with this new trilogy? Don't you still have a bad taste in your mouth from Solo and especially The Last Jedi? Well, to answer that second question as directly as possible, no, I actually enjoyed both of the previous 2 Star Wars films, despite their flaws, and in the case of Last Jedi, not only was I interested in the mysteries they set up, but also the ones from Force Awakens they left unresolved, which I'm pretty confident they're going to come back to in this final installment. I really want to know what's going to happen between Rey and Kylo Ren. I know they kind of brought that to a little bit of a slowdown in Last Jedi, but I really do feel there is potential to bloom between those two. There's definitely a connection between them. I'm just not sure what it is. I'm interested to see what it does turn out to be. I'm curious, while we're talking about character arcs, what's going to happen to everyone else in the film? Finn, Poe, Rose, especially seeing as Mark Hamill and Billy Dee Williams are set to reprise their previous roles, and we even are getting archival footage of Leia to wrap up her story as well. I'm not sure whether we'll be returning to old worlds or visiting new ones, maybe a little bit of both, but I'm excited for the adventure no matter what, and at the end of the day, it all boils down to one single solitary thing. Star Wars has always been my favorite fictional universe. There have been many that I'm glad to have introduced myself to throughout the years, but none have ever had that same lasting impact. The galaxy far, far away has had a huge influence on me as a writer, a film buff, and of course, a nerd to the core. There is no way I could contain my excitement for the conclusion to one of its trilogies, and for that reason, as well as all those others I listed, Episode 9 is my most anticipated movie of the year. So those are the titles that I'm personally looking forward to the most, but I doubt my list is identical to yours. What films are you craving to get to as soon as possible this year? Whatever they may be, comment below and let me know. Also, do you strongly agree/disagree with any of my picks? If so, drop me a note for that. I'd love to discuss it as well. Until then, I will see you all at the movies.